For 3 months, we've been trying to answer one question. What is 3I Atlas? Is it a probe, an exploration vessel, a military craft, a colony ship? We've measured it, analyzed it. Today is February 18th, 2026. Right now, at this very moment, something extraordinary is happening that most people are completely unaware of. The European Space Agency's JUICE spacecraft, currently on its journey to Jupiter, has just begun downloading critical observational data that it collected during a planned flyby of an object that has dominated astronomical headlines for months. That object is 3I Atlas, the interstellar visitor that has defied every attempt at classification. The data transmission window opened at 0600 hours Universal Time this morning and will continue through February 20th. During these 72 hours, high-resolution images and spectroscopic analysis from one of humanity's most sophisticated space-based instruments will flow back to Earth, and based on preliminary reports that are already circulating through private channels within the European Space Agency, what JUICE observed is forcing scientists to completely reconsider everything they thought they understood about this object. Before I explain what is happening right now and why today specifically matters, I need to establish the timeline that brought us to this critical moment, because the story of 3I Atlas is not just about a mysterious object passing through our solar system. It is about an escalating pattern of contradictions that has left the global astronomy community unable to agree on even the most basic questions. Is it natural or artificial? Is it a comet or something else entirely? Is it disintegrating or transforming? Every new observation seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. Let me take you back to where this began, so you understand why today's data matters so profoundly. 3I Atlas was first detected in January 2025 by the Atlas Survey System in Hawaii. The initial classification was straightforward, based on preliminary observations. It appeared to be an interstellar comet, the third such object we had ever detected entering our solar system from interstellar space. The first was Oumuamua in 2017. The second was 2I Borisov in 2019. Both of those objects passed through, were studied extensively, and departed. Their data was shared openly. Their properties were analyzed and published. There was scientific debate about some of their characteristics, but nothing that fundamentally challenged our understanding of how natural objects behave. 3I Atlas was immediately different. Within weeks of detection, it began showing non-gravitational acceleration. Its trajectory was adjusting itself in ways that required some kind of force beyond solar gravity. This happens with comets all the time through outgassing, so initially it was not alarming. But 3I Atlas was not showing typical cometary characteristics. No visible tail. No obvious coma of gas and dust. Spectroscopic analysis revealed a surface composition that did not match known comets. Too much metal, not enough volatile ices. Then came the radio emissions. On two separate occasions, multiple observatories detected brief but structured radio signals emanating from the object. The signals were in the hydrogen line frequency at 1.42 GHz, narrow bandwidth, precise frequency. And most disturbing, the second emission contained what appeared to be a sequence of prime numbers. That is when NASA and other space agencies began responding differently. Resources were redirected. The Deep Space Network pointed multiple antennas at the object. And then, crucially, public data sharing began to slow down and eventually stopped for certain categories of observations. I covered this in detail in previous analysis. The institutional response suggested they were detecting something they considered sensitive enough to require controlled handling. But what happened next is where the story becomes genuinely strange. Because instead of the mystery being solved, it has only deepened with each new observation. And the observations have been contradictory in ways that should not be possible if this were simply a natural object following predictable physical laws. Let me walk you through the contradictions chronologically so you can see the pattern. In late January, Hubble Space Telescope captured high-resolution images showing 3I Atlas with multiple jet structures, 4 distinct jets emanating from the central nucleus. 3 of them spaced exactly 120 degrees apart in perfect geometric symmetry. The 4th jet was pointing directly toward the Sun. That should be physically impossible. Comet tails always point away from the Sun due to solar wind and radiation pressure. You cannot have material streaming toward the Sun unless something is actively pushing it against those natural forces. The Hubble images also revealed a ring structure in infrared wavelengths. A 15-kilometer diameter thermal ring radiating heat at temperatures higher than solar heating alone could explain. The ring showed 12 bright spots evenly distributed around its circumference, forming a perfect dodecagon. Natural geology does not produce perfect 12-sided geometric patterns. Engineering does. Then, in early February, a different set of observations told a completely opposite story. Professor Avi Loeb and his team at Harvard conducted detailed analysis searching specifically for technosignatures. They were looking for any evidence that the object might be artificial, any sign of technology or engineered systems. Their conclusion, published on February 4th, was unambiguous. No technosignatures detected. The object showed no evidence of artificial construction, no radio transmissions beyond the initial 2 emissions, which they suggested might have natural explanations, no signs of power generation, no structural features consistent with spacecraft design. In their words, 3I Atlas appears to be a natural object, possibly a comet or asteroid from another star system with unusual but not impossible properties. That conclusion directly contradicts what Hubble photographed. How can an object simultaneously show perfect geometric patterns suggesting engineering while also showing no evidence of technology? Both observations were conducted by reputable institutions using state-of-the-art instruments. Both teams are highly credible, yet they reached completely opposite conclusions. Then on February 5th, everything became even more confused. The SETI Institute released a statement that they had conducted extensive radio monitoring of 3I Atlas for 3 weeks using the Allen Telescope Array. They were searching for any additional transmissions beyond the initial 2 signals. Their finding was absolute silence. No radio emissions detected at any frequency. No structured signals, no carrier waves, nothing that would indicate active transmission systems. They concluded that the initial signals were likely one-time events, possibly caused by natural processes we do not fully understand yet, but not evidence of ongoing intentional communication. But here is where it gets truly bizarre. Just 3 days later, on February 8th, NASA's Spheric Space Telescope detected something completely unexpected. 3I Atlas had just passed perihelion, its closest approach to the Sun, on January 28th. After perihelion, comets typically become more active as solar heating intensifies sublimation of surface ices. Spherics detected a massive eruption from 3I Atlas, a sudden, violent outburst of material that dramatically increased the brightness of the object and created a substantial cloud of gas and dust around it. This eruption was so intense that for a brief period, 3I Atlas became visible to amateur astronomers with small telescopes. Before the eruption, you needed professional equipment to observe it. After the eruption, backyard astronomers were photographing it. A research paper analyzing this eruption was published today, February 18th, by Dr. Kerry Lissay and colleagues. Their analysis of the Spherix data shows that the eruption was not typical cometary outgassing. The spectroscopic signature of the expelled material contained water vapor, which is normal for comets. But it also contained complex organic molecules and metallic compounds that are highly unusual. More significantly, the eruption appeared to originate from multiple discrete points on the surface simultaneously, rather than from a single active region, as you would expect from solar heating. Dr. Lisa's paper uses very careful language, but the implication is clear. The eruption did not behave like a natural comet responding to solar heating. It behaved more like a controlled release of material from specific locations. So now we have another contradiction. The SETI analysis says no technology detected, but the eruption pattern suggests controlled, coordinated activity from multiple points. Which observation is correct? They cannot both be true if we are talking about a simple natural object following predictable physics. And then we arrive at today, February 18th, 2026, the day the JUICE spacecraft data transmission begins. Let me explain what JUICE is and why its observations matter so critically. JUICE stands for Jupiter Icy Moons Explorer. It is a European Space Agency mission launched in April 2023 with the primary objective of studying Jupiter's moons Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa. The spacecraft is currently in transit to Jupiter, following a complex trajectory that includes multiple gravitational assist flybys of Earth and Venus to build up the velocity needed to reach the outer solar system. JUICE is equipped with extremely sophisticated instruments, high-resolution cameras, spectrometers capable of analyzing chemical composition in extraordinary detail, radar systems that can penetrate surfaces, magnetometers, particle detectors. It is designed to study icy moons in the outer solar system, but those same instruments are perfectly suited to analyzing comets and asteroids. In mid-January, JUICE's trajectory brought it relatively close to 3I Atlas. Not close enough to be dangerous, but close enough that ESA mission planners decided to use the opportunity to conduct observations. This kind of bonus science is common. When a spacecraft happens to pass near an interesting target, you take advantage of the instruments you have on board. JUICE observed 3I Atlas on January 16th and 17th. The spacecraft collected high-resolution images using its Janus camera system. It conducted detailed spectroscopic analysis using the MAGIS instrument, which can identify specific chemical compounds. It measured the object's magnetic properties. It analyzed the composition of any gas or dust surrounding it. All of that data was stored on board the spacecraft. And starting this morning, February 18th, that data is being transmitted back to Earth during a scheduled communication window that will remain open through February 20th. Right now, as you are reading this, that data is arriving. Scientists at ESA operations centers are receiving the raw information. They are processing it. They are analyzing what JUICE saw, and based on preliminary information that has leaked from sources within ESA, what JUICE detected is astonishing. I need to be careful here because the official data release has not happened yet. ESA will undoubtedly want to verify and analyze everything thoroughly before making public statements. But according to multiple independent sources who have seen early data returns, JUICE's observations detected something that neither supports the natural comet hypothesis nor the artificial technology hypothesis. It detected water, massive amounts of water vapor. The MAGES spectrometer identified clear, unambiguous spectral signatures of H2O in the gas surrounding 3I Atlas. Not just trace amounts, substantial quantities consistent with active sublimation of water ice from the surface. This should settle the question. If it is outgassing water like a comet, then it is a comet. Mystery solved. Except that the same data also shows something that comets do not do. The water vapor is not distributed evenly around the object as you would expect from a rotating nucleus with solar heating creating a uniform coma. The water is concentrated in specific, discrete plumes emanating from precise locations on the surface, and those plumes are not random. According to the preliminary Janus images, which are apparently extraordinarily detailed due to JUICE close approach, the plumes originate from the exact positions where Hubble observed the jet structures. The 4 jets that Hubble photographed in January, JUICE observed them actively emitting water vapor, including the anti-solar jet, the one pointing toward the sun. So we now have confirmation that water is being expelled toward the sun against solar radiation pressure and solar wind. That requires active propulsion. That requires force being applied to push material in a direction it should not naturally go. But here is the contradiction that has ESA scientists reportedly confused. The same JUICE observations that detected water also detected the complete absence of other volatile compounds that should be present in cometary ice. Comets form in the outer regions of stellar systems, where temperatures are extremely cold. They accumulate not just water ice, but also frozen carbon dioxide, frozen carbon monoxide, frozen methane, frozen ammonia, and various other compounds. When a comet approaches the sun and heats up, all of these compounds sublimate together. You get a complex mixture of gases. That mixture is one of the key signatures we use to identify comets and understand where they formed. JUICE detected water, but it detected almost no carbon dioxide, almost no carbon monoxide, none of the other expected volatiles, just water. Pure water being expelled in controlled plumes from specific surface locations. That is not how comets work. Comets are dirty snowballs. They are mixtures of ice and rock and organic compounds all frozen together. You cannot selectively outgas only water while retaining everything else. Unless the water is stored separately, unless it is contained in some kind of reservoir that can be released independently of other materials, unless it is being used for something. The preliminary analysis circulating within ESA reportedly includes speculation that is extremely cautious but genuinely remarkable. Some researchers are suggesting that what JUICE observed might be consistent with water being used as reaction mass for propulsion. If you had reservoirs of water and a way to heat it rapidly, you could create high-pressure steam and expel it through nozzles to generate thrust. This is actually a proposed concept for spacecraft propulsion called a steam rocket or water-based thruster. It is efficient, it is relatively simple, and it uses a propellant that is abundant in space. If 3I Atlas is using water as propellant, it would explain several contradictions simultaneously. It would explain the water detection without other volatiles. It would explain the discrete plumes from specific locations. It would explain the anti-solar jet because directed thrust does not care about solar wind. It would explain the non-gravitational acceleration observed since January, but it would also mean the object is artificial, because natural objects do not have propulsion systems. Now here is where the situation becomes genuinely troubling from an institutional perspective. ESA has not released any of this data officially. The preliminary information I am sharing comes from sources who are speaking privately about what they are seeing as the data arrives. But there is reportedly intense debate happening right now within ESA about how to handle the public release of this information. Because if they announce that JUICE observed evidence consistent with water-based propulsion, that is essentially announcing that 3I Atlas is artificial. That is not a statement any space agency makes lightly. The implications are enormous. The scrutiny would be intense. The demands for absolute certainty would be overwhelming. But if they do not announce it, if they simply say JUICE observed water vapor and interesting jet structures, then they are concealing the most significant finding. They are seeing evidence of technology and choosing not to report it clearly. Either choice carries massive consequences, and reportedly, there is not consensus within ESA about which path to take. Some senior scientists are arguing for complete transparency. Release all the data, explain what was observed, acknowledge that it appears anomalous, invite the global scientific community to analyze it, and offer interpretations. Others are arguing for extreme caution. Verify everything multiple times. Rule out every possible natural explanation, no matter how unlikely. Only make statements that are absolutely defensible. And there is apparently a third faction arguing that this should be coordinated with NASA and other agencies before any public release. That discoveries of this magnitude should not be announced unilaterally by a single space agency. This internal debate is reportedly why the data transmission that began this morning has not been accompanied by any public statement or press release. ESA announced weeks ago that JUICE would be conducting a data downlink during this period, but they have said nothing about what that data contains. The official ESA website shows that data transmission is ongoing, but there is no indication of what is being received or what it shows. Meanwhile, within the agency, scientists are apparently analyzing observations that may fundamentally challenge our understanding of what 3I Atlas is. Let me give you additional context that makes this situation even more complex. 3I Atlas is currently moving away from the Sun after passing perihelion on January 28th. It is heading outward through the solar system on a trajectory that will take it past Jupiter's orbit in late March. Specifically, on March 16th, 3I Atlas will pass within approximately 28 million kilometers of Jupiter. That is relatively close in astronomical terms. Close enough that Jupiter's immense gravity will affect the object's trajectory. If 3I Atlas is a natural object following ballistic physics, we can predict exactly how Jupiter's gravity will alter its path. The gravitational interaction is pure mathematics. We can calculate the deflection with extreme precision, but if 3I Atlas has propulsion, if it can adjust its own trajectory, then what happens during the Jupiter encounter becomes unpredictable. It could use Jupiter for a gravitational assist to accelerate outward faster. It could adjust its approach to achieve a specific exit velocity and direction. It could even, theoretically, use propulsion to enter orbit around Jupiter rather than flying past. The March 16th encounter is now being viewed by some researchers as a critical test. If the object follows the predicted gravitational path exactly, that supports natural origin despite all the anomalies. If it deviates from the predicted path in any way, that is strong evidence of artificial control. We are 26 days away from that test, and what JUICE observed, what is being analyzed right now as the data arrives, may indicate what we should expect to see at Jupiter. There is another element to this story that I need to mention because it adds another layer of strangeness. On February 14th, just 4 days ago, NASA's James Webb Space Telescope conducted observations of 3I Atlas using its near-infrared instruments. JWST is the most powerful space telescope ever built. Its infrared capabilities are extraordinary. It can detect incredibly faint signals and analyze them with unprecedented detail. The observations were scheduled months ago as part of a program to study interstellar objects. They were approved and publicly listed in JWST's observation schedule, but the data from those observations has not been released. Normally, JWST data goes through a proprietary period where the research team that requested the observations has exclusive access for analysis. But that period is typically 6 months to a year, and it is clearly stated in the observation schedule. The 3I Atlas observations show no proprietary period. They were listed as public data that would be immediately available. But 4 days after the observations were conducted, the data has not appeared in the public archive. When researchers have inquired about access, they have been told the data is undergoing calibration and validation and will be released following standard procedures. That is unusual, but not unprecedented. Sometimes data requires additional processing before release, but the timing is notable. JWST observes 3I Atlas on February 14th. JUICE data transmission begins on February 18th. Both datasets are being held back from public release, and sources at both NASA and ESA are reportedly discussing coordination on how to present findings. This pattern suggests that what both telescopes observed is consistent with each other, and that the agencies want to announce results together rather than separately. Or it suggests they observed something significant enough that they are being extraordinarily careful about verification before making any statements. Either way, we are in a situation where multiple independent observations from different instruments on different spacecraft are all being held back simultaneously. That is not normal scientific practice. That is controlled information management. Let me bring this back to today, February 18th, and why this specific date matters. The data arriving from JUICE right now represents one of the closest and most detailed examinations of 3I Atlas that any spacecraft has conducted. JUICE was much closer than Hubble, much closer than any ground-based telescope, close enough to resolve surface features and measure chemical composition with extraordinary precision. If there are answers to be found about what this object actually is, the JUICE data likely contains them. Over the next 48 hours, as the data transmission continues, ESA scientists will be processing and analyzing observations that may definitively answer whether 3I Atlas is natural or artificial. The detection of pure water vapor from discrete plumes, if confirmed, would be extremely difficult to explain naturally. The absence of other volatile compounds that should be present in cometary ice would strengthen that difficulty. The concentration of plumes at geometrically significant locations would add further weight. And if the detailed surface imaging shows any structures that appear artificial, any features that cannot be explained by natural geology, that would be conclusive. We should know within days. ESA cannot sit on this data indefinitely. The astronomy community knows the observations were conducted. Researchers are waiting for the data release. Questions are already being asked about why it is taking so long. At some point very soon, ESA will have to make a statement. They will either say that JUICE observed a comet with unusual but ultimately natural properties, or they will say something else. something that acknowledges the anomalies cannot be easily explained by natural processes, something that opens the door to the possibility we have been avoiding stating directly. I want to be very clear about what I am and am not claiming here. I am not stating definitively that 3I Atlas is artificial. I am not declaring it is a spacecraft or probe from another civilization. What I am saying is that the observational evidence is becoming increasingly difficult to reconcile with purely natural explanations. An object that shows geometric patterns, emits radio signals matching prime numbers, demonstrates controlled water plumes, lacks expected cometary volatiles, and exhibits non-gravitational acceleration is challenging every natural hypothesis we have proposed. And the institutional response, the coordinated data management, the delayed releases, the careful coordination between agencies, all suggest that the scientists directly analyzing this object are seeing something they consider extraordinary enough to require extremely careful handling. Today, February 18th, is significant because it is the day we start receiving data that may answer the fundamental question, what is 3I Atlas? Over the next several days, as JUICE data is processed and JWST observations are analyzed and the March 16th Jupiter encounter approaches, we will learn more. The truth, whatever it turns out to be, is being revealed right now. Scientists are looking at the data at this moment. They are analyzing spectra. They are examining images. They are running calculations. And they are making decisions about what to tell the public and when to say it. You should pay attention to the announcements that come from ESA over the next week. You should watch for any statements about JUICE observations. You should notice whether the data is released openly or whether access remains restricted, because how they handle this will tell you as much as what they say. If the data shows a natural comet with unusual properties, they will release it quickly and openly. There is no reason to delay. If the data shows something they cannot easily explain, the delay will continue. More analysis, more verification, more coordination. And if the data shows evidence that cannot be reconciled with natural origin, we will see a very carefully worded statement that acknowledges anomalies while stopping short of declaring artificial origin. They will use phrases like unexpected features and requires further study and does not match current models. They will not say spacecraft or technology or artificial. But if you read carefully, if you understand what they are not saying as much as what they are saying, you will understand what they found. February 18th, 2026, the day the data arrived. The day we started learning the truth about 3I Atlas. Whatever that truth is, we will know it soon. And it will change everything.